A German Shepherd puppy falling from a 100-foot bridge. Everyone believed they were witnessing a tragedy. But what happened next stunned onlookers and defied all explanation. Get ready for a heart-stopping story of survival, extraordinary courage, and a series of events that will make you question what's truly possible. This is the remarkable journey of Atlas, a 3-month-old German Shepherd puppy whose impossible fall became the beginning of something miraculous. The Riverside Bridge stood as an architectural marvel, spanning the churning waters of the Colorado River. At 100 feet above the water, it offered breathtaking views that attracted tourists and locals alike, especially on perfect May afternoons like this one. Rebecca Morgan, a 34-year-old veterinarian, had decided to take her 3-month-old German Shepherd puppy, Atlas, for their evening walk across the bridge. The energetic pup had nearly completed his vaccinations and was finally exploring the wider world beyond their backyard. "Easy, Atlas," Rebecca cautioned as the puppy strained at his new leash, eager to investigate every scent and sound. His oversized paws and ears hinted at the magnificent dog he would become, though his current gangly frame was all puppy enthusiasm. The bridge bustled with the usual evening crowd. Rebecca stopped midway across to admire the view, Atlas sitting obediently at her feet, his tail sweeping the concrete in wide, happy arcs. Suddenly, a cyclist came around the bend too fast, swerving to avoid a pedestrian. The sudden movement startled Atlas, who jumped backward in fear. Rebecca felt the leash pull from her grip as Atlas backed away in panic, his collar slipping over his head. "Atlas, stay!" she called desperately, but fear had overwhelmed his training. The puppy backed directly into the pedestrian railing. In any other circumstance, the barrier would have stopped him. But through some cruel twist of fate, a section of the lower railing had been damaged by a recent storm. The gap was just wide enough for a small puppy. Time seemed to slow as Rebecca watched Atlas's hind legs slip through the opening. His front paws scrabbled frantically at the concrete, brown eyes wide with confusion and terror. She lunged forward, fingers grazing his fur but unable to grasp him. "No!" she screamed as Atlas vanished through the gap. Far below, the Colorado River churned with spring runoff, its surface broken by partially submerged rocks and swirling currents. The height was more than enough to be fatal for a human, let alone a 15-pound puppy. Michael Chen, a 28-year-old kayaker who had been preparing to paddle downstream, witnessed the fall. Without hesitation, he launched his kayak into the current, paddling frantically toward the spot where the puppy had disappeared beneath the surface. Above, Rebecca ran toward the shore access point, her heart pounding with dread. The chances of survival were virtually zero. The fall alone could be fatal. Add the dangerous currents and cold water, and hope seemed impossible. Yet, as the crowd watched in stunned silence, something broke the river's surface, 30 yards downstream from the impact point. A small, wet head, desperately paddling. Atlas was alive, but the miracle had only just begun. Michael maneuvered his kayak through the turning rapids, eyes locked on the struggling puppy. Atlas was fighting the current with everything his small body had, but he was being swept downstream at an alarming rate. "Hang on, buddy," Michael called, though he knew the terrified animal couldn't understand. The kayaker had rescued stranded wildlife before, but never in such treacherous conditions. On the shore, Rebecca ran alongside the river, scrambling over rocks and underbrush, her medical training at war with her emotional panic. "Please," she whispered repeatedly, a prayer to whoever might be listening. Atlas disappeared underwater again, then resurfaced several yards farther downstream, clearly weakening. His small head barely broke the surface now, and his paddling had become erratic. Michael pushed his paddle deeper, gaining speed. He was close now, perhaps 15 feet from the struggling puppy, but what he didn't see was the partially submerged tree trunk ahead, its gnarled branches creating a deadly strainer in the current. Atlas was heading directly for it. Just as the puppy approached the deadly branches, something remarkable happened. A large branch floating nearby seemed to shift course unnaturally, sliding between Atlas and the strainer. The puppy collided with this makeshift barrier instead, momentarily protected from the deadlier obstacle. Michael didn't question the lucky break. He closed the distance and reached out with his paddle. "Grab on, boy!" Whether by instinct or desperation, Atlas managed to get his front paws on the paddle blade. With tremendous care, Michael guided his kayak sideways and lifted the waterlogged puppy aboard. But the river wasn't finished with them yet. A sudden hydraulic wave appeared directly in their path. The kayak tipped precariously as they hit the churning water. Michael braced himself, using his body to shield the puppy. In that critical moment, Atlas seemed to understand his protector's intentions. Instead of panicking, the puppy went still, pressing himself against Michael's chest. Their unexpected teamwork allowed Michael to execute a role that kept them upright. They pushed through the hydraulic and into calmer water. As they approached the shore, Rebecca waded knee-deep into the water. Michael handed the wet bundle of fur into her waiting arms. Atlas immediately recognized his owner, his tail giving one weak wag before he collapsed against her chest, utterly exhausted. "He's alive," Rebecca whispered, tears streaming down her face as she quickly assessed her puppy. Emergency services arrived minutes later, including Dr. James Wilson, a fellow veterinarian who had been driving nearby when the call came in. He helped Rebecca perform a thorough examination of Atlas right there on the riverbank. "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Wilson muttered, checking the puppy's limbs, spine, and abdomen. "A fall from that height should have caused severe internal injuries, broken bones at minimum." Yet Atlas had no broken bones, no signs of internal bleeding, not even a sprain. Beyond exhaustion, mild hypothermia, and a few superficial scratches, the puppy seemed miraculously unharmed. "It's impossible," Rebecca agreed, wrapping Atlas in emergency blankets as the shivering subsided. "But here he is." What no one realized then was that Atlas's survival wasn't just lucky. It was the beginning of something extraordinary, something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the connection between animals and the world around them. Atlas led her outside, where the day was just beginning. Nothing seemed amiss in the quiet neighborhood. Yet the German shepherd's body language conveyed absolute certainty. He oriented himself toward the mountains west of town, his focus unwavering. Rebecca had learned to trust these signals implicitly. She gathered emergency supplies, loaded Atlas into her SUV, and began driving toward the mountain range. No calls had come in, no alerts had been issued. But experience had taught her that Atlas's awareness often preceded official recognition of emergencies. They drove for nearly an hour, following forest roads deeper into the wilderness. Finally, they arrived at a remote trailhead where a single vehicle sat abandoned in the parking area. "Someone's in trouble up there," Rebecca murmured, reading Atlas's body language. She called emergency services to report their location and suspicions, then prepared for a search. Atlas took the lead immediately, moving up the trail with purpose. Unlike typical search dogs, he didn't follow scent patterns. Instead, he seemed to perceive distress directly, regardless of physical traces. But the river wasn't finished with them yet. A sudden hydraulic wave appeared directly in their path. The kayak tipped precariously as they hit the churning water. Michael braced himself, using his body to shield the puppy. In that critical moment, Atlas seemed to understand his protector's intentions. Instead of panicking, the puppy went still, pressing himself against Michael's chest. Their unexpected teamwork allowed Michael to execute a role that kept them upright. They pushed through the hydraulic and into calmer water. As they approached the shore, Rebecca waded knee-deep into the water. Michael handed the wet bundle of fur into her waiting arms. Atlas immediately recognized his owner, his tail giving one weak wag before he collapsed against her chest, utterly exhausted. "He's alive," Rebecca whispered, tears streaming down her face as she quickly assessed her puppy. Emergency services arrived minutes later, including Dr. James Wilson, a fellow veterinarian who had been driving nearby when the call came in. He helped Rebecca perform a thorough examination of Atlas right there on the river bank. "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Wilson muttered, checking the puppy's limbs, spine, and abdomen. "A fall from that height should have caused severe internal injuries, broken bones at minimum." Yet Atlas had no broken bones, no signs of internal bleeding, not even a sprain. Beyond exhaustion, mild hypothermia, and a few superficial scratches, the puppy seemed miraculously unharmed. "It's impossible," Rebecca agreed, wrapping Atlas in emergency blankets as the shivering subsided. "But here he is." What no one realized then was that Atlas's survival wasn't just lucky. It was the beginning of something extraordinary, something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the connection between animals and the world around them. 2 miles into the forest, they found her, a wildlife photographer who had fallen from an overlooking ridge while trying to photograph eagles. Her injuries weren't life-threatening, but a broken ankle had left her stranded overnight, her cell phone smashed in the fall. "How did you find me?" she asked as Rebecca administered first aid. "I wasn't even supposed to be here. No one knew where I was going." Rebecca nodded toward Atlas, who had positioned himself like a sentry, scanning their surroundings with alert attention. "He knew you needed help." What made this rescue particularly remarkable was what they learned afterward. The photographer, Lisa Chen, had been drifting in and out of consciousness due to pain and exposure. During her lucid moments, she focused intensely on visualizing help arriving, specifically imagining a German shepherd finding her. "I don't know why I pictured a German shepherd," she told Rebecca as they waited for the rescue helicopter. "I've never even owned a dog. The image just came to me strongly, and I held on to it." This incident triggered a new phase in Dr. Reeves's research. "It suggests a two-way connection," she theorized. "Not just Atlas sensing distress, but potentially responding to directed thought, a form of consciousness bridging we've never documented before." 1 year had passed since Atlas's impossible fall from Riverside Bridge. He had grown into a magnificent young German shepherd, his puppy clumsiness replaced by the dignified bearing of his breed. At 15 months old, he was still maturing physically, but there was nothing immature about the intelligence in his amber eyes. The anniversary found Rebecca and Atlas walking along the riverbank, Dr. Reeves accompanying them with her research notebook. The scientist had documented hundreds of instances of Atlas's extraordinary abilities, building a case study unlike any in scientific literature. "We've confirmed 17 distinct perceptual expansions," Dr. Reeves explained as they walked. "From electromagnetic sensitivity to what can only be described as consciousness bridging. He's essentially experiencing reality through dimensions most beings never access." Rebecca nodded, though her attention remained on Atlas. The German shepherd moved with unusual purpose today, his focus drawn repeatedly to the bridge above them, the site of his fateful fall. "He wants to go up there," Rebecca realized. "He's been guiding us toward the access path all morning." Dr. Reeves looked concerned. "Are you sure that's wise? It could trigger trauma responses." But Rebecca trusted Atlas's instincts completely. If he wants to return to the bridge, there's a reason. They made their way up the winding path to the pedestrian walkway. Atlas showed no fear or hesitation as they approached the spot where he had fallen through the damaged railing. The section had been repaired, reinforced with additional safety measures. At the center of the bridge, Atlas stopped, sitting precisely where he had fallen 1 year earlier. His posture was alert but calm, his attention focused on the rushing water far below. "What is it, boy?" Rebecca asked, kneeling beside him. "What are you sensing?" For several minutes, Atlas remained perfectly still, as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he did something unprecedented. He placed his paw directly over Rebecca's heart, fixing her with an intense gaze. In that moment, Rebecca experienced something extraordinary. The world around her seemed to shift, overlaid with patterns of energy and connection she had no words to describe. She could feel the water molecules moving beneath the bridge, sense the electrical impulses of tiny creatures in the soil, even perceive the slow pulse of growth in the trees along the shoreline. The experience lasted only seconds before fading, leaving her gasping. "What was that?" she whispered. Dr. Reeves looked alarmed. "What happened? Are you all right?" I felt what he feels," Rebecca said, struggling to articulate it. "It was like seeing through his perception, everything connected, everything visible across time. Atlas watched her calmly, as if this sharing had been his intention all along. Then he stood and moved to Dr. Reeves. The scientist instinctively reached out, and the same connection formed as Atlas placed his paw against her hand. "Extraordinary," she breathed, scientific detachment temporarily abandoned. It's not just that he perceives differently. He can share that perception, create a bridge between consciousnesses. In the months that followed, this ability became Atlas's most remarkable contribution. Working with carefully selected researchers and emergency responders, he demonstrated how his shared perception could revolutionize search and rescue operations, medical diagnosis, and disaster prevention. On his second birthday, Atlas received recognition from the governor, a specialized service medal, acknowledging the lives he had directly saved through his extraordinary abilities. That evening, as Atlas sat beside her watching the sunset over the river that had nearly claimed him, Rebecca reflected on the miracle that had begun with tragedy. The puppy who had fallen from Riverside Bridge hadn't just survived against impossible odds. He had returned with a gift, a glimpse into perceptions beyond human understanding, and the ability to share that perception with others. "You were always meant to fall," she whispered, laying a hand on his back. "And somehow, you knew you'd rise." If this tale moved you, if you felt the tension, the heartbreak, and the triumph, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring more thrilling, emotional, and inspiring stories your way. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Do you believe dogs have an extraordinary sixth sense? Share your thoughts and personal stories with us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.